Welcome po sa Opinion TVPH channel. Mga kababayan, sabay-sabay po natin panoorin ang balitang ito at sama-sama tayong mag-react sa comment section. Please support my channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Joining us now is Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. Sir, so last week, you made headlines. We said that we're going to discuss about the budget, but if we could talk about the DPWH statement you made last week. So last week, you said that some members of the team of DPWH Secretary Vince DIZON have links to contractors or are contractors. After that, former USEC Ari Perez resigned. And what are your thoughts about that?
First, I stand by what I said, and I also made those statements in the press con to discuss the budget, calling for reducing the discretion of the DPWH on where to allocate funds across the country because there is no perfect team. I do respect Secretary Dizon's leadership and was able to discuss with him after that event that I do have the evidence that I referred to, including pictures of members of the team meeting with contractors recently. And if he wants to, I could release it. But I believe that as the objective of the press conference was, we want reform on the DPWH budget. And he has made good steps towards committing to lower the price of DPWH projects and releasing more information on the proponents of DPWH projects. And I think that if these policy reforms are being taken, then we can trust that we are serious about the 2026 budget being better than 2025.
And can you clarify, Representative Leviste, there are social media posts going around that after former USEC Perez resigned, you retracted, or you said you made a mistake, you weren't pertaining to him when you said that there are members of the DPWH who have links to contractors.
On our Friday press conference, I said that the appointee being referred to in response to one question was not USEC Ari Perez, because I said that there is one appointee who was photographed in a recent meeting with contractors, and the one in the photograph was another appointee.
Okay.
But I am not denying my earlier statement that USEC Ari Perez has had certain questions in his history in regards to bidding and procurement, and this includes during his time in the BCDA. But I believe that what matters now is that we work together with Secretary Dizon to push forward on reforms on the DPWH budget, and that the bottom line is that Secretary Dizon vouches for his team. And again, no team is perfect, but if we can lower the price, then it doesn't matter what discussions are being had with contractors, in my opinion, because lowering the price ensures that there is no budget for kickbacks in 2026. That being said, it would also be nice if there were more disclosure on meetings with contractors taking place outside of the DPWH office, but that again, we're looking at the bottom line, which is reforming the DPWH budget.
Pero can we go back to Perez? So you're saying he's not linked to contractors? It's more of the bidding, the questionable bidding that might have happened when he was still with BCDA.
He also is.
Oh, he has links, or he is a contractor?
Links.
I see.
But as I had previously publicly stated, there are several of them that have links to contractors, and reportedly, although I qualify this statement, there are also those who are. But again, I will give Secretary Dizon the benefit of the doubt on delivering the bottom line, which is reform of DPWH, regardless of the composition of the team.
Ilan, sir, do you think? Are we talking about?
Honestly, I think several, because not only was I told and have evidence in some of those cases, but many of us, of course, have links and know, and also in our daily lives talk to, especially if you're in the construction industry. What matters is that preferably there is transparency on it, and that the budget does not grant discretion and space for what has been a much reported system of giving kickbacks in DPWH projects.
You said you have proof, and last week, your colleague in the House of Representatives, Bicol Sero Party List Representative Terry Ridon, said the burden to show proof is on you because you are the accuser. Aside from photographs, what else do you have?
During the press conference, I received a call from a high-ranking official of the DPWH. That is a confirmed phone call by Secretary DIZON's instruction, and I was asked not to divulge more because these are the same people who were working on to reform the DPWH budget, and I again would leave it to Secretary DIZON. If he wants us to bear all of this information in the public, then I can, but I'm guided by what I think will be the best in terms of getting these proposed reforms in the budget approved.
So, I know you'd rather not talk about it in public, pero just to push it a little, so you have documents, maybe transactions, or any paper trail. Kasi photographs, di ba, usually, ang dami nagsasabi na, may nakipag-picture lang sa akin. Photos do not really prove any connivance. Marami na rin nagsabing ganun na politicians.
Yes, but I think there should be more disclosure on what meetings have taken place outside of the office, especially because there is a history of officials of the central office of DPWH offering and selling projects to contractors in the budget formulation stage.
But on the proof, there are documents. You have documents on hand.
Yes.
Okay. And have you talked personally to Secretary Vince Dizon, aside from his staff, who called you last week?
Yes, I did, and that's why I am on this show to discuss the policy solutions and focus less on reopening the question on the personalities, because again, I've always been saying that we have to change the system, not the people, and we are lucky that we have Secretary Dizon at the helm of DPWH now, and that ideally we can take this opportunity to have structural reforms that will make sure that no matter who is the team at the helm of the DPWH in the future, it will not be prone to corruption because there should be less discretion on the allocating of budgets.
I just want to get your reaction because Secretary Vince Dizon previously said it doesn't mean that having a link makes you corrupt. It doesn't mean that you're asking for bribes or doing something illegal. It's not automatic. That's what he said.
Yes, and I think that it will be good to be transparent on the links and the meetings so that the public can judge.
And you said you're giving Secretary Vince the benefit of the doubt. You don't think he turned a blind eye when he maybe appointed some of these members of his team who might be contractors or who have links to contractors?
The good thing is that they've all just started their terms. So no purported bid rigging has occurred yet at their instruction. But I do want to put context to the fact that it has been reported that almost 100% of bids in the DPWH are rigged by no less than the former Undersecretary of DPWH, Roberto Bernardo. And that system of bid rigging is orchestrated from the district engineers and the regional offices. And that bureaucracy has not changed with the change of leadership in the central office. And in the past, the officials in the central office also allowed for that system of bid rigging to take place. I think no one will deny that if it was almost 100% a few months ago, it's far from zero. It's probably still close to almost 100% now, despite the reforms that are already taking place in the central office. That is why I am trying to bring light to the seriousness of this issue, because maybe the public doesn't realize that real biddings rarely happen in the DPWH. This is something that I can attest to based on my own district, and I think if you are to privately talk to other people familiar with the matter, as well as in government, they would say that that's been the case for a long time, but it's fortunately coming more to light now, and that it's healthy for our public to discuss it more, especially with the political will to make changes in the DPWH so that hopefully it will happen less in the future.
So can you shed light on that, sir? How does the bidding happen if it's not real?
The district engineers, of course, have a way of doing it where they will disqualify bidders who are not part of the pre-selected list of contractors who will either bid to win or bid higher than the one who will bid to win, but them reportedly colluding, and even the losing bidders getting a certain percentage of the contract price, because they're of course all using their names to legitimize the bidding process. And in exchange for getting the contract at a high price, the winning bidder has room to give a kickback, which is shared between the proponent or funder and the people within the DPWH system. And this is why I've been advocating for a 25% across the board cut. And this is why I'm also very thankful that Secretary DIZON is at the helm of the DPWH, because he has publicly expressed support for and has committed that there will be cuts across the board on the price of DPWH projects. And in yesterday's Senate budget hearing, many other members of the Senate also expressed support for the same. Again, if we take a look at the reports, that there are, let's say, an average of 15% for proponents and 10% for people within the DPWH system in terms of kickbacks, then there is a potential for a 25% across the board cut that will not reduce the contract price that can go into the project, as long as the district engineering offices will do their jobs in terms of monitoring the compliance of the work accomplishment to the program of works. And of course, COA should also do its job in auditing the work of the projects. But that, as has been reported, less than 50% of a contract price actually goes into a project. So I think in the ideal world, 25% across the board cut would be reasonable, but of course subject to what is feasible also within our political environment. But the more public attention there is to the fact that, again, almost 100% of bids in the DPWH have been reported to be rigged, and consequently that giving kickbacks on DPWH projects, given the high prices, is so widespread that hopefully there will be more political will to make that cut as close as possible to 25%, which on 600 billion pesos would be almost 150 billion pesos of savings in 2026.
Won't the integrity or the quality of the project be sacrificed with a 25% cut?
Well, as I said, if the less than 50% of the contract price goes into a project, then a 25% cut would still leave ample room for the profit for a contractor, unless the district engineering office will allow for substandard work. The comparison is with both local government units that reportedly have lower prices per kilometer on roads. In my own district, let's say standard spec road should have, let's say, 16 million peso per kilometer cost, but with DPWH would have a 20 or 21 million peso per kilometer cost. With private sector, the same road might have a 10 million peso per kilometer cost. So I think contractors will not deny that the prices are much inflated. It depends on the district engineering offices to monitor the compliance with the program of works, but that in the time of Secretary Babe Sing Son, who has also been an advisor to Secretary DIZON, there was both an across-the-board cut in the DUPA, the detailed unit price analysis, as well as mandatory variance from the approved budget for contract. By that I mean, if you have a 100 million peso project and the winning bidder is 97 million pesos, that is a red flag for collusion in the bid. If the DPWH sees that there is not, for example, at least 10% variance from the approved budget for contract, then, as was done in the time of Secretary Sing Son, those projects can be rebid. So there's been experience already on this, and there's a lot, I think, that DPWH can do both in the budget process and in the bidding process to ensure that we can achieve that 25% savings, but that the simplest thing right now is with the stroke of a pen, we can have savings just from the budget process.
The project you mentioned, the overpricing or the inflated budget for a road, for example, is very similar to what was exposed in the Senate Finance hearing regarding farm-to-market roads. Now, there is about more than 10 billion overpricing in farm-to-market roads na sana napunta sa ibang projects. Aside from roads, are there other projects which are overpriced, which are inflated that you have seen?
I think streetlights have a very high propensity for overpricing. In my district, we saw that there was a 280 million peso contract for 1,200 solar streetlights, which was basically 230,000 pesos per streetlight, which had a market price of maybe 60,000 pesos. And slope protection has also been popular because maybe it's also in places with fewer people. And there's a 1.1 billion peso slope protection project in my district in 2025 that was not requested by the local government. And I was asking around, not even requested by my predecessor, the former congressman. I was told that the project was actually at the initiative of the regional director of DPWH, Jovel Mendoza, and that the price of the project at 45,000 pesos per square meter raises questions on whether there was some transaction that took place for 1.1 billion pesos, the largest allocation for any district in Calabarzon in 2025, to fund this slope protection project in a place that was not requested by the local government. And I think only the contractors of the project would know if there was any proponent behind this 1.1 billion peso slope protection project.
So we see that district engineers really have a role in all this anomaly, as was exposed also in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings. Based on your investigation, how has this persisted?
The thing I actually wanted to raise is the inequitable distribution of the budget across districts, because the perception is that the DPWH is essential to the economy, when in fact, if we can show the budget per region,
we'll try to get that.
41% of the country's population is between Pangasinan, Region 3, NCR, Region 4A. And only around 25% of the DPWH budget has been allocated in 2026 to this highly populous region, and has been the case for previous years as well. The bulk of the DPWH budget actually goes to less populous regions. And also in terms of paying taxes, I think most of your viewers are probably from these most populous regions, and we pay almost 60% of the country's taxes, but we only get, in this case, 25% of the DPWH budget. Now, you might think it's good for the other regions that they're getting the disproportionately higher percentage of the DPWH budget. But as I gave the example of, in my own district, there's a 1.1 billion peso project that no one even asked for. The tendency, I believe, is that projects are being put in less populous areas because that's where it's easier to hide substandard work, and there is less scrutiny on the work being done as compared to if it were, for example, in Batangas, Cavite, Bulacan, or Pampanga. And the consequence of this is what we are solving for when we are allocating the DPWH budget is not what the people need the most, but what contractors might find most lucrative. And it's lucrative if, for example, you can make the asphalt on a road thinner than the government paid for, because there are few people actually monitoring the asphalting on the road, which also tends to be done at night.
Can you give us examples of these areas which are less populous, but where substandard projects are inserted para hindi mabisto?
Actually, the flavor of the year, I believe, tends to change per year. And it's not necessarily based on who is politically in power, but where the contractors and the insiders in DPWH think that there's a lot of not yet done projects that can be done with less scrutiny at that time. So if you can see from the table that was on the screen a while ago, I would like to state for the record, Region 1, the Ilocos region, actually has a below average budget per population in this year. Western Visayas is in the Visayas and yet also has below average. So it's not even Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. But that there are some regions, as you can see on the screen, I wouldn't want to point a finger at the regions that have a higher budget per capita because it changes each year. But that there are some regions, for example, that are very mountainous. And many slope protection or rock netting in the past projects have been reported in these regions that the people from those regions are even criticizing because they're saying there were so many other types of projects
that could have been done
to benefit us. Last year, for example, the flavor of the year was Mimaropa 4B. And just the province of Oriental Mindoro got maybe 30 billion pesos of DPWH funding. And if you consider that there's maybe 200,000 families in Oriental Mindoro, that might be almost 150,000 pesos per family. So the question is that really what the people of Oriental Mindoro needed to have 150,000 pesos per family of budget going into a few flood control projects in a few towns? Or is that an indication that it's not engineers or policymakers allocating funds in the DPWH budget, and that the DPWH budget is not actually driving economic growth, but it is actually being written with the advice, shall we say it, of contractors. And that's what I actually wanted to let the public know, that in my own experience, when you're in Congress, contractors go to you and say, I am going to talk to the regional director or the district engineer for your region to put this project in your district. If it comes in, they will give the contract to me and I will give you a parking fee. So in my next slide, I actually shared an example of my own district's budget, where it mentions here what's allocable and non-allocable.
Those are new terms actually. Can you, before we delve into that, can you explain sa layperson, sa ordinary person, if you can do it in Filipino, para mas maintindihan, ano yung allocable, ano yung non-allocable?
Actually, may nagbiro na ang allocable, yung pwedeng i-allok. Yung non-allocable, yung iba actually yung nag-a-allok. Kung ikaw yung district congressman, yung allocable ay iyo.
Okay.
Pag sabi ng iyo, you can errata or amend it in the budget. But I'm sorry to say this, unofficially, you can also choose the contractor. But if it's non-allocable, iba ang may-ari ng budget na yan. At minsan, hindi mo alam kung sino. Kasi sa paglabas ng NEP, meron ibinigay sa akin ng listahan, ang DPWH, na ito yung mga non-allocable projects sa aking distrito, hindi ko magalaw. At sa next slide, mamamatch natin yung non-allocable project sa aking distrito sa listahan na ibinigay sa akin ng aking dating district engineer na nagsasabi na meron contractor na nag-submit nito sa DPWH Central Office for funding na yun nga ang lumabas later on sa NEP. So, ang ibig sabihin po nito, totoo, ayon sa karanasan ko, ang testimonya sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings na ang mga contractors naglalakad na ipasok ang mga proyekto na gusto nilang gawin sa NEP na ginagawa ng DPWH Central Office. At ayon po sa mga Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings, paglabas pa lang ng NEP, may bayad na.
Yes.
And I'm raising this now because the original NEP for 2026 was done in July. And when Secretary DIZON came in, he resubmitted the NEP in September. But a lot of these projects from July are still in the NEP. I sympathize with Secretary DIZON for coming in midway through the budget process, but there is still time for us to remove the projects that are tainted with the, let's say, intervention of contractors, and we're also subject to the claims that projects were sold in the DPWH central office under his predecessor in the DPWH.
But when the House of Representatives was discussing the 2026 proposed budget, you were able to remove some of those allocable, non-allocable insertions or items.
A congressman can errata the allocable projects in his district, and that's actually something that perhaps people might find surprising, that if you're a district representative, you have discretion over what to put in your district for the allocable. But the non-allocable, the congressman does not have control over. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there is a list of what these non-allocable projects are. And there is a list also of who submitted the requests for those projects. So perhaps we cannot conclude that we must change these projects in the budget. But I think it's the least that we can ask that there be transparency and disclosure on, among all these line items in the budget, what are the allocable and non-allocable projects, and who are the proponents. Other congressmen have also asked for more of this data. And by the way, the table that I showed earlier was something that we devised from the line items in the budget, because the DPWH budget, among other agencies, is very, very thick, and you can piece together these numbers based on the many line items there. But the data on what's allocable and non-allocable is less publicly available, but that if one can look at a per legislative basis, one could dig up what is allocable and non-allocable, and that it certainly help us ensure that the 2026 budget won't have parking by contractors if there be disclosure on what are these non-allocable projects.
So can the Senate and eventually the bicameral conference committee still do something about these non-allocable items?
Certainly. And I think some might say it's out of the DPWH's hands because it's now in Senate and Congress. But the DPWH has the data on how these projects ended up there. And again, I'm not sure how the public feels with the knowledge that there are projects that are in the current proposed budget that, if we piece this together with the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings, were paid for to be inserted, and we not do anything about it. If we'd like to think that there is a change in the DPWH now, then I think that we must revise much of the 2026 DPWH budget, not only on, let's say, the 100 billion of non-allocable projects there, but even in the allocation of the 400 billion of allocable projects, because one of the other things that came out in the hearings with the DPWH budget was that even the new leadership of the DPWH does not understand or agree with the formula that was used by the previous leadership of the DPWH on how much is the allocable budget per district. There is no formula behind why a big province has a smaller budget than a small province that could have 2 or 3 times the budget. The need to give budgets to certain districts more than others can be justified, but that there is no consistent formula being applied. So I think your viewers can easily assume that there's lobbying behind certain provinces having larger budgets, and if it's only based on influence, that wouldn't be as bad. But what has come out in the testimonies on the flood control projects is that it's not just based on influence. It has been based on kickbacks. And the consequence for this, for a district that does not entertain bid rigging is that, well, if I can add to my earlier statement on what happened after I got these comments from my former district engineer saying these contractors want to park projects in my district. When you're not allowing for bid rigging in your district, when the new NEP came out, these non-allocable projects moved out of my district. Nilipat. Because anyone who parks projects in my district will not be able to rig the bid and thus get a kickback out of that project. So unless we change this system of discretionary allocation of budgets, the tendency will be, number one, to move projects to the districts like the Bulacan 1st District Engineering Office, where there is a district engineer who is not just allowing for bid rigging and kickbacks, but is giving the highest rate for kickbacks. There are some districts that have higher kickbacks than others. And second, that they will still find the kinds of projects that have the highest propensity for kickbacks. In the past, that was flood control, but still now, that is roads, asphalt overlays, street lights, and slope protection. Yes, they removed cat's eyes, but they still have almost 15 billion pesos of street lights in the 2026 budget, which in my district's case was around 4 times overpriced. And again, no district is winning from this, because even the districts that are getting big budgets, like the example of Oriental Mindoro, are getting projects funded that the people don't need and are being selected because they are the most profitable for the proponents and the contractors.
So it's feels like it's such a huge undertaking to fight this. Do you think what can be done step by step? Kasi sabi mo nga, you fought it, you did not allow it to be parked in your district, but then maghahanap siya ng iba. So how do we go around fighting this if it's this systematic?
It's actually quite easy to do if there is the will to do it. The first is today, the data on what is allocable and non-allocable can be released, including the proponents for all non-allocable projects. I do not believe that there is not a record of who submitted the list of each project that has been included in the budget.
And this will come from the list? DBM?
For the NEP, it should come from DPWH.
Okay.
For the House and the Senate versions of the budget, it can come from the finance committees of the respective chambers of Congress. But actually, in this budget, there's been relatively little movement in the amendments in the House, because the so-called insertions or amendments have been moved earlier up in the system to the NEP, which is actually worse, because then there's less transparency, because there's a claim that this is the DPWH's and not Congress's budget, because there's been this stigma on congressmen getting involved in the budget process. But what's happened is that it's those that have a inside track to get the projects in at the DPWH that are able to put it in the budget. But again, we can't change all of this overnight, but at the very least, we can disclose. And
After disclosure?
After disclosure, well, I would propose that the formula that Secretary DIZON thankfully disagrees with from the previous leadership of the DPWH, which is basically no formula, but just arbitrarily allocating bigger budgets to smaller districts, or at least under allocating to very populous regions, is easily replaced if you just get, for example, the percentage of population or land area or whatever other metric of one district to the whole country, and then saying for each district, this is the budget that should be given to that district. And if that means that there are certain cuts for some, but additions for others, then those adjustments can be made. Again, it's not easy to do it for political reasons, but if this analysis is done, then I think a lot of people would say that makes more sense, because to put it another way, the small so-called districts that are getting bigger budget than smaller districts are not going to lose if we have this reshuffling, because what they're going to lose would be projects like the 20 billion peso flood control in Oriental Mindoro in 2025. And instead, they could get, for example, classrooms.
Yes.
The reason why there's a classroom shortage in this country, if I can put it so bluntly, is because there are almost no kickbacks in classrooms.
Because they prefer the infra projects, the road projects.
There is a higher propensity to do substandard work on, for example, the thickness of an asphalting project than on a 3-story classroom building. You could make a substandard classroom building, but then if the 3-story building falls over, then you won't win your next election. So, of course, there can still be kickbacks on classroom projects, but it is less because it is much harder to make that kind of project substandard. So I would propose that we also not look at the percentage of the budget that districts get, but also the percentage of the budget that certain types of projects get. And if we want to reduce kickbacks in 2026, then we should cut the asphalt overlay and slope protection budget and transfer more of it to classrooms.
And for our final question, Representative Leviste, yesterday during the Senate hearing, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian proposed maybe cutting the DPWH budget by 348 billion pesos more. So from the original proposal of 888.31 billion, it became 625 when they resubmitted, and it might be just 277 billion if the 348 that will be cut will push through. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, I would like to credit the House for cutting the 880 to 624. And I think that Senator Gatchalian's point actually is that a lot of the projects that he flagged didn't have clear definitions in the budget. And if they don't have clear definitions, maybe they're not absolutely essential. But that I don't think we need to cut the DPWH budget per se, but we can replace projects with those that are essential. And the DepEd has a list of 165,000 classrooms that are needed in this country, and I believe that many of the members of the Senate, including Finance Committee Chair Gatchalian, are great believers in the need to prioritize education. We need 400 billion pesos to end the classroom shortage, and maybe if we cut some of these undefined DPWH projects, it would be well spent to allocate that towards classrooms for 2026.
And with that, we thank you so much, Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste.